Hi, we are in the middle of a crisis, and this crisis, it's a constitutional crisis that goes right up to the throne of England and threatens to destroy the very unity of our United Kingdom. It's threatening to literally break it apart. So, with Johnson now announcing that he's going to suspend Parliament within days of Parliament's return next week in order so he can push through his Brexit plans, either for a deal that will not have been democratically accepted by Parliament and very likely will end up in a no-deal Brexit, because now the prime card on the table is the hard border in Ireland, and a hard Brexit will mean a hard border in Ireland, and any deal that does go through will not be a democratically vetoed deal, and we are a democratic nation. So Corbyn's now requested an immediate meeting with the Queen to stop Boris Johnson from suspending Parliament, and it's been announced as a very grave act and actually a threat against our constitution as a nation. But Boris Johnson, it appears, has already beat him to it, because the Queen, and this is from today, 28th of August, the Queen has already agreed to Boris Johnson suspending Parliament. She's already approved his request to suspend Parliament just days after it returns from summer recess next week, and only weeks before the Brexit deadline. Johnson is seeking to suspend Parliament so his government can deliver a Queen's speech on October the 14th, which lays out the government's agenda for the parliamentary session. The suspension of Parliament will shorten the amount of time members of Parliament have to attempt to block a no-deal Brexit before the current deadline. Johnson has said Britain will leave the EU on October the 31st with or without a deal. But we have no say in this deal. We don't know what this deal is going to include. And actually, it's very likely that he will be leaving with a hard Brexit, because that is what they have been planning for, a hard Brexit. So I'm just going to go to this, the proposal for revoking Article 50, which I was asked to write by a Remainer, and to present the legal arguments for why it needs to be cancelled or at least suspended. The European Union defines terrorism for legal official purposes in Article 1 of the Framework Decision on Combating Terrorism 2002, paragraph or page 49. This provides that terrorist offences are certain criminal offences set out in a list consisting largely of serious offences against persons and property that, given their nature or context, may seriously damage a country or an international organisation where committed with the aim of seriously intimidating a population or unduly compelling a government or international organisation to perform or abstain from performing any act or seriously destabilising or destroying the fundamental political, constitutional, economic or social structures of a country or an international organisation. Well, this coalition government has seriously destroyed, and are in the process of hoping to destroy even further, the fundamental political, constitutional, economic and social structures of our country, and that after trying and failing to do the same to the EU, in the sense that they wanted to block the EU tax regulations, which is what this is all about. This is what it's about. It's about the 1% protecting their financial interests and powers. Now, what I do not understand is how the Queen could agree to this. How she could agree to this, because she's sworn an oath to uphold God's law, you see, and the laws and traditions of her people. So that includes the whole of Britain. It includes the people of Northern Ireland, the people of Scotland, Wales and England, because that's the country she is now reigns as sovereign leader over. And that makes the British people sovereign citizens and also EU citizens. And because we are within the EU and the Queen has obviously agreed to that, so she also is beholden to EU law as well. Because the whole point of her swearing an oath of office is that she basically is agreeing that she will never be above God's law, that she too will be subject to honouring God's law. But Boris Johnson and the Tory party do not live by God's law, which basically God's law amounts to right equals might to do as thy will. So are you right? Are you a righteous person? Are you lawful? Are you considerate of the rights and needs of others beyond your own selfish desires? Are you somebody we can trust not to engage in fraud, perjury and theft in order to assert your will against people and put them at risk? You see, that's what God's law is all about. It's upholding the righteous people and protecting them, protecting the innocent and the vulnerable. That's God's law. That's what the Queen has sworn an oath to uphold. Luciferian law, criminals law, because, you know, Lucifer is a fictitious character. The reality of it, as a consciousness on earth, is a criminal, isn't it? So we're dealing with a criminal government that has actually engaged in acts of terrorism, murdering British people with an economic policy. That they live by a law of might equals right to do as thy will. You see, so are you strong and powerful? The more stronger and powerful you are, which strength in an economist equates to how much money you have. So the rich then, are you rich and powerful? Then you can do whatever you want. You are above the law. As they said, these Tories, the bankers are too big to prosecute, apparently. But you can prosecute a beggar on the street for begging and throw him in jail. Antisocial behaviour, apparently. So what we're dealing with then is people who believe that might equals right to do as thy will. And if you get into power and you're very rich, it doesn't matter how you gained your wealth. It doesn't matter how you gained your seat of power, as long as you won it. It doesn't matter if you've used lies and deception, if you've employed an actually criminal social engineering corporation that systematically engages in entrapment, blackmail, bribery, employs online armies, that Boris Johnson and the Tory party have admitted to employing an online army of cyberbots to promote Brexit and all kinds of other far-right agendas. So apparently it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your leaders, like for example David Cameron, and actually all the Tory leaders and the top Tory backers, have been engaged in huge financial fraud. That does include exploiting tax loopholes, and all these companies that they've been involved in will all be up for scrutiny, because the EU will be examining them all to see what taxes they owe. And they're all going to come a cropper because they're going to find out that half of these companies, they don't even exist. They're fraudulent. They're money laundering operations. We know for a fact that Boris Johnson, his campaign that he was head of, the Leave campaign, actually used money from the profits of blood diamonds. $7 million. 7 million. Through Russia. And, you know, I'm not talking about Russian government here. We're talking about a corporate oligarchical class, that a cabal that consists of people from every nation. And even including the Israel lobby. Because Al Jazeera did an expose of the Israel lobby, both and its criminal activities, actually, that they were operating in Britain and America. But on camera, you know, a member of the Israel lobby states in that documentary, the Al Jazeera expose, and I'll leave you the link to it under this, the real strategic goal is to get the UK to behave more like the US than Europe. Pull them, tug them into the US sphere. Well, Brexit has done exactly that, hasn't it? Brexit has achieved exactly that, because now it looks like we'll be doing a deal with America for our food. Now, Boris Johnson has stated that, you know, we will have a deal with the US within 6 months. But again, he is lying. He is lying. Because, actually, Congress has said they will block it, as I've explained in my previous video. And we're talking about a Democrat-ruled Congress, and they will block it precisely because of the hard Brexit border in Ireland, because of the risks of the resurgence of hostilities that were only brought to a standstill with the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. And from that time on, the people of Ireland, North and Southern Ireland, have enjoyed a soft EU border. Now, this again brings us back to the Queen. Because how can she agree to honour the wishes, approve a request of Boris Johnson, an unelected leader? Now, he is an unelected leader of an actually criminal organisation called the Tory Party, because that's what it has become. A criminal organisation. They've murdered people. They've abused their powers to harm Britain. They've employed a foreign-controlled social engineering firm to spy on British citizens, invade their privacy, target them online, troll them, even people were even being threatened who were supporting to stay in the EU. Threatened and intimidated. And now this man that she's approved his plan to suspend Parliament so he can push through a Brexit that is very likely to mean a hard border across Ireland and a resurgence of hostilities. And also, simultaneously, a man who has agreed, they've already set up plans. Look, this is from January. They're planning for martial law under emergency no-deal Brexit preparations. Well, how are the people of Ireland, both North and South, going to take to that being governed by martial law for a Brexit they did not vote for, because Northern Ireland voted to remain in the EU? How are the people of Scotland going to take being governed by martial law for a Brexit they did not vote for, and that is damaging them? How can a queen of a nation who was sworn to uphold and protect, defend her nation, approve the requests of a man who their own Tory party are shown? They were asked a series of questions. In fact, I'll get them up for you now. They were asked a series of questions on a poll. So here we are. Conservative Party members would sacrifice the integrity of the UK and the existence of their own party for Brexit, but would rather call it off than see Jeremy Corbyn become Prime Minister. So the Tories would rather Brexit took place, even if it caused this scenario, or they could vote red, would rather Brexit did not take place to avoid this scenario. Okay, so they're quite happy to lose Scotland. Very happy, actually. Look, 63%. They're very happy to cause significant damage to the UK economy. They're very happy to let Ireland leave the United Kingdom. They're even happy to see the Conservative Party be destroyed for the sake of Brexit, a hard Brexit. Oh, the only time that they would consider abandoning Brexit was if it meant Jeremy Corbyn would be Prime Minister. So how can a queen of a nation who's sworn an oath to stand by the law and to defend her nation, which at the moment is a United Kingdom, she's approved the request of an unelected Prime Minister who's head of what are known to be a criminal Tory government comprised of people who've committed the kind of financial crimes that one of the Queen's subjects, an officer of a retired RA officer in her army, an engineer, he's got all the evidence here proving, and it includes David Cameron, he's right in the thick of it, have committed huge crimes of financial fraud and theft against the British people, asset stripping out independent British businesses, asset stripping pensions, asset stripping British people's trust funds. She has agreed to approve the request of a man who now represents that same party, unelected, who is his Brexit threatens to break Britain apart and even scrap the Good Friday Agreement. Now, how can the Queen agree to scrap the Good Friday Agreement? How can she agree to suspend Parliament, a Parliament that would have questioned a hard Brexit precisely because of the threat to the Good Friday Agreement? How can she allow him to suspend Parliament so he can get through a deal or no deal that will scrap the Good Friday Agreement? How can she leave that down to one individual who is a known perjurer, and that her high courts have failed to prosecute when it is known that he told blatant lies that persuaded people to vote against their own best interests and that have put their lives on the line, and him knowing full well that in the event of the hard Brexit and people realising exactly the severity of the lies that he told, he's planning to put them under martial law. How can the Queen agree to that and in any sense and expect to remain Queen? What's she Queen of then? Queen of criminals? The Queen of England is Queen of England. She swears that oath of office because she is trusted that ultimately she will uphold the law. She will stand under God's law because nobody is above it. And that was the whole point of the Magna Carta. And from there on after, that the Queen, she is not God in our nation, or rather a devil-like God, as David Cameron and Boris Johnson and co are. Because they don't want to, they operate outside the law. And that's what their whole Brexit is about, is protecting their tax havens. And, you know, Boris Johnson is still lying to the people, because he's telling the people that, oh, yes, you know, we're going to have a deal with America within 6 months, you know. But no, Congress is going to block a trade deal. And Congress is, at the moment, packed with Democrats who are very concerned about the hard Brexit border. So if Boris Johnson pulls out of the EU with no deal, that any possibility of a deal with the US, it's going to be, it could be years, because Congress is going to block it. Because if we've left the EU with a hard Brexit, with no deal, and there's a hard border across Ireland, that's it. Congress has said no, they're going to block it. They're blocking it. Donald Trump might be there patting Boris Johnson on the head, saying, oh, don't worry, we'll help you, but they will have to get through Congress. You see? Because Donald Trump will not be able to suspend Congress while he pushes through a deal to give food, you know, toxic, contaminated food that's banned in the EU, to Britain. Now, the other very concerning thing here is that they're talking about a deal with Japan. So if we don't get this deal with America, maybe we'll get a deal with Japan. And then you look at Japan and Fukushima, and the fact that the whole nation is basically bathed in radioactive material that's been going on for how long now? 3 ongoing nuclear melt-throughs. So, you know, maybe from worrying about chlorinated chicken and hormone-injected beef and Monsanto-laden vegetables coming across from America to Britain, maybe we ought to start thinking about the radioactive food that might be coming to us from Japan. It just gets worse and worse. What kind of queen will a sovereign ruler of a nation threaten even the power of her own crown? And don't forget, she's only a custodial of that crown while she reigns. There's Prince William waiting in the line there, and his son. What's going to be left for them? No Scotland, no Ireland, because it is very likely that, you know, Ireland being faced with martial law in Northern Ireland, because this will be throughout Britain, which includes Northern Ireland and Scotland, that both Scotland and Ireland, the people will immediately demand independence and remain EU citizens, with the whole of Ireland being EU. And so what's going to be left? And then Wales is very likely to join them, because the vast majority of the Welsh electorate now have changed their minds since they've realised they were duped by Boris Johnson's lies. And it is abominable that the High Court has said he can't be prosecuted when he's told such lies that have caused such risks and have brought such risk to our nation, to the extent that they're already in January they've been planning for martial law. And that means curfews, that means restriction on freedom of movement, it means a ban on protests. I mean, what hope is there after that of ever having a democracy in Britain again? And from a government, this terrorist organisation calling themselves the Tory party, have already promised and pledged to scrap our human rights. So we won't even have any rights to have a democracy or a vote. We're not just going back to Victorian Britain, we're going back to the Dark Ages under rule of what amounts to feudalism run by a corporate aristocracy. And not even a British aristocracy. You know, we're talking about a global corporate aristocracy. That, you know, these people would rather all of these terrible things happen then allow the opposition to get... So, what? So they're not bothered about breaking... Now, that is the most serious thing of all, that they... Even the Conservative Party being destroyed is preferable than for them not to have their hard Brexit. What does that tell us then? But, they'd abandon Brexit if Jeremy Corbyn got into power. If it meant Jeremy Corbyn would be Prime Minister, then they'd abandon Brexit. So what does that tell us? That tells us something very important there. That is telling us that they know full well that if they get their hard Brexit and their martial law, well, they won't have to worry about a Labour MP or a Labour Party ever again, doesn't it? They won't need a Tory party because they'll be in rule forever, won't they? Because we'll have no democracy. We'll be an independent nation run like those tax havens by a dictatorship. This is treason. This is treason. It really is. It's high treason because it's a threat against the Crown itself. Or is the Crown itself against the British people? Then, I'm sorry, you've broken your contract, Your Majesty. You have ripped it up and thrown it in the bin. Your oath of office, the contract that you have signed, you aren't fit to be a queen. You're not a royal family. What are you then? You're a traitor serving foreign powers and putting at the expense of our nation, at the expense of our United Kingdom, at the expense of our democracy, at the expense of our Parliament. How can the Queen of England agree? How can she approve Prime Minister Boris Johnson, unelected Prime Minister Boris Johnson's plan that includes scrapping the Good Friday Agreement and putting her citizens at risk of a resurgence of the hostilities that only brought to an end by that Good Friday Agreement in 1998? Surely that is an act of crime from the Crown now against the Irish people, the people of Northern Ireland, who have voted to remain in the EU. How can the Queen ignore the fact that those people have voted to remain in the EU and satisfy the request of Boris Johnson, who wants to put them at risk and scrap their Good Friday Agreement and ignore their vote to remain in the EU? And even knowing that he's already planned martial law when we get his no-deal Brexit. He's already got that waiting in the wings. These things are known. They're out there. How can the Queen... Look, the Queen, I know she's an elderly lady. She's obviously been very, very badly advised, and I appeal to the ministers around her, the people around her. Please, talk to her, because this is very serious, and we are talking, this constitutional threat goes right up to the very throne of England itself now. And the very fact that the Queen has been so ill-advised and persuaded to approve Boris Johnson's request to suspend Parliament, knowing full well that he has in his open hands, the cards in his hands are the hard Brexit, the hard border across Ireland, scrapping of the Good Friday Agreement. This is going to cause major social unrest in Northern Ireland, a resurgence of the hostilities. This is going to cause major unrest in Scotland. It's going to cause major unrest within Britain itself, within England and Wales. No crown, no royal queen could possibly agree to that for her own country. For what purpose? What is the purpose of it? Except to protect a minority of bankers and actually criminal financiers, because they don't want the EU scrutinising their businesses and tax avoidance schemes. They don't want to pay their taxes. The people on the ground, the British people who are paying our taxes, that go to the Crown, you're not, as a Queen, you're going to put all of us at risk in order to stand by people who don't pay taxes and don't want to pay any taxes. I don't get it. I honestly, I could just sit and cry. So, you know, instead I've made this video. I'm going to leave you all the links underneath it. Please share this, because we are in serious times. Now, hats off. I mean, I've been giving them a hard time for their wishy-washiness, but finally, you know, the opposition has stood up and they are doing their best now to block a hard Brexit and also to stop this suspension of Parliament. But it is now up to us, we the people, who they are representing, because that's why they're moving this fast now, because more and more people throughout Britain are getting more and more disturbed the more news that's coming out about the potential hard Brexit that Boris Johnson obviously wants. That's their favoured scenario. So they're forced to act, because it does mean an end of an opposition. It does mean an end of an opposition, because that is why the Tories are quite happy, even see the Tory party, the Conservative party, being destroyed, because they know they won't have to worry about an opposition ever again if they get their hard Brexit. You see? So now it is up to us, the people, to stand up for our rights. We're going to have to do in Iceland. We don't want mad riots. We don't want violence. We're not going to smash up and destroy in our own communities and intimidate the residents there. No, we are not going to do those things. We are not the savages here. We are not the lawless people here. We have a sovereign lawful duty to stand up for the law and the unity of our United Kingdom. That's our sovereign duty, to stand up against tyranny, treason, to stand up against traitors. So we're going to have to do in Iceland. In every town, every city. We will need to stand by our representatives now who are standing up to Johnson and the Tories. We now need to stand with them. And then it's going to be up to the police and the army, the military, to decide, well, who are you? Are you a British citizen first? Or are you just a paid lackey, like any soldier in a mercenary army? And you just do as you're told. You're told to train your guns at the British people and force them into a corner to strip them of their rights and destroy our nation. Is that what an army is there for? Is that why Gordon Bowden was an RAF military engineer? Is that why he joined the army? Because he wanted to be part of an organisation that ultimately would happily serve the interests of terrorists and criminals in order to rob people of their rights, their livelihoods, even the food off their children's plate, and even the medicines. And to have basically a military coup, because that's what Brexit amounts to. It is a military coup. The very fact that they've been planning martial law under circumstance of a no-deal Brexit, the very fact that they've already planned this, that they've already got this planned out, shows their intent. There's an intent there. This is a military coup. They've tried by deception. They've tried by lies. They won by a very slim margin when actually it should have been over a third win. You see, but even that is in dispute. They've tried to persuade the people. Now know they've been lied to. So it's like, yeah, you know, we better have martial law ready, hadn't we? Rationing. Having people on rationing. putting us in a wartime situation during peace. What queen agrees to that? What ground? What kind of a queen is it that would agree to that? To a sovereign leader who's sworn an oath, had signed a contract, sworn an oath to God at Westminster Abbey. I mean, why was she even in that abbey then, if God's law doesn't come into this? We do need to do an Iceland, and we are going to have to do it. You know, I know that there's a demo set for the 19th of October. I think it's a bit too far down the line. We're going to have to do it now, in the next few weeks. It's going to have to be more like the 19th of September. We do need to do it, because we are talking about an existential threat here. We really are. We really are. And you might think, oh, this could never happen. It will happen. If we stand by and let it, it will happen. You don't know how quickly and how badly things can go. There's nobody there, people. There's nobody going to come and rescue us, the British people, when we are facing martial law, and that's it, democracy is dead and buried in our nation. No nation's going to come and help us out. The only thing we could hope for is that other countries put sanctions against Britain, which would mean we suffer even more. There's nobody there except us. And the more power they get, the less power we have. And once they've removed your human rights, how are you going to ever change it again? And everything that our forebears fought for and sacrificed and suffered and struggled through so much for. 2 world wars. And they're taking it all away with Brexit. Our rights, our workers' rights, everything. Environmental protection laws. Do we even care about our environment? I mean, again, how can a queen agree to support a man, approve the request of a man who puts even the environment of her nation at risk because he wants to remove and scrap all the protection laws of the environment? Does she not even care about the very lands that she's sovereign over? Doesn't she have a duty of care to make sure that her country is safe according to 21st century standards? Because we're not in the 15th century, are we? She does, because she was part of the EU. She was a queen within the EU, and her people, that has become our tradition. That's become our political and social and economic foundation. I mean, this is an act of tyranny now from the Crown itself. Is Prince William, a part of that? It's going to be passed to him, or Prince Charles. I think Prince Charles has said he'll step down and, allow Prince William to be king. I think that's been the rumour, though who knows. But, this is a constitutional threat. It does go right up to the throne of England, and even brings into question now the Church of England, because they've been very quiet in all of this. They crowned that queen, and they've been very quiet in all of this. Where's their voice? What have they got to say about the British people being attacked and murdered and terrorised by this set of criminals? And even now facing martial law, and even knowing that, look, they'd rather see the whole of Britain broken apart and even their own political party destroyed to get their Brexit, and the only way they'd stop Brexit is if Jeremy Corbyn it meant Jeremy Corbyn would immediately be Prime Minister. Okay, then they'd scrap Brexit, because they know damn well that if they get all of everything they want, there will never be another Labour Prime Minister in Britain again. There will never be. Because democracy will be dead, so you won't need a Tory party. It's as clear as day, people. It's as clear as day. And it is actually a very sunny, shiny, happy day for us that wake up and stand up and stop this and now turn our country around. And let's get to reality. Let's get back to being a humane society that doesn't elect governments that want to scrap our human rights. We elect governments that uphold our human rights.